They told her the bakery was next door. They laughed when she asked for a sniper rifle. Her hoodie was faded. Her shoes were frayed. She looked like someone who'd never held a weapon, let alone one the government still classified. But she said one name, just one, and the entire gun store froze. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She just took the shot and split a coin at 200 meters. By the time she walked out, one man had saluted, and half the staff was unemployed. The bell chimed with a delicate resonance as Lily Monroe stepped across the threshold into Denver's most upscale gun shop, her presence immediately disrupting the testosterone-heavy atmosphere like a whisper interrupting a war cry. She looked profoundly out of place, painfully so, her very existence seeming to challenge every assumption about who belonged in this world of tactical vests and battle-hardened ex-Marines. At just 26 years old, she possessed the kind of soft, angelic beauty that seemed almost ethereal against the harsh backdrop of military surplus and cold steel. Her blonde hair braided with careful precision over one shoulder, catching the fluorescent light like spun gold. Her faded hoodie hung loosely on her small frame, paired with scuffed jeans that told stories of adventures unknown and worn canvas sneakers that had clearly walked many miles. A canvas backpack, seemingly too large and heavy for someone so slight and delicate, pulled at her shoulders with a weight that suggested hidden depths beneath her unassuming exterior. The clerk behind the counter made no attempt to hide his condescending grin, his eyes scanning her from head to toe with obvious amusement. "Lost, sweetheart. The bakery's just down the block where you belong." His words triggered a wave of knowing laughter that rippled through the room like dominoes falling, each chuckle building on the last as seasoned customers joined in the mockery of this seemingly naive young woman who had wandered into their domain. But Lily didn't even blink, her voice cutting through the laughter with surgical precision. M93 Spectre, with a custom titanium compensator and precision trigger pull adjusted to exactly 1.2 pounds. I know you keep it secured into the back vault. The silence that followed fell like shattered glass hitting concrete, sharp and absolute. The Spectre wasn't found in any public catalogs or mainstream publications. It existed only in hushed conversations on encrypted forums where serious collectors gathered in digital shadows. Only one had ever appeared at auction, selling for an astronomical sum to an anonymous bidder. The clerk's confident smirk began to falter, uncertainty creeping into his eyes. Another man, imposing and loud in his leather vest, stepped forward with a dismissive scoff that seemed to fill the entire shop. "Listen here, darling. You absolutely sure you ain't just here to clean these rifles? Better be real careful not to chip that pretty little manicure of yours." The others joined his cruel laughter, but something had shifted in the room's energy. Lily's eyes remained perfectly calm, steady as mountain lakes before dawn. "I'd like to test it on your range, please." The woman in perfectly polished heels and a precisely styled tactical ponytail sauntered forward with deliberate confidence, her movements calculated to command attention in this male-dominated space. Her smile was sugar-sweet but razor-sharp as she delivered her cutting words. "I'm terribly sorry, honey," she said with mock sympathy dripping from every syllable. "But we simply don't loan out priceless museum pieces for amateur YouTube tutorials or social media stunts." The snickers that followed her comment rippled through the assembled crowd like a cruel symphony, each laugh adding another layer to the wall of dismissal they were building around this unexpected intruder. But Lily didn't flinch, didn't show even the slightest tremor of intimidation or self-doubt. Instead, with movements as deliberate and calm as morning mist, she set her canvas backpack down on the polished concrete floor and slowly unzipped it with methodical precision. The sound of the zipper cutting through the tension was almost audible. Inside, revealed like sacred artifacts, lay only 3 items: a pair of well-worn shooting gloves that spoke of countless hours at ranges unknown, their leather softened by experience and dedication, a weathered notebook filled with what appeared to be meticulous, handwritten calculations and observations, and remarkably, nothing else that might suggest the amateur status they'd all assumed. "I'm not here for tutorials or entertainment," she said softly. her voice carrying a quiet authority that seemed to shift the very atmosphere of the room. I'm here to see if the stock alignment is still offset from factory specifications. Your last online listing mentioned a zero point 0.4 degree flaw in the mounting system that affects long-range accuracy. Her technical knowledge hung in the air like a challenge thrown down before experts. The older man positioned in the corner, the one nursing his black coffee while sporting a faded but proud Marine Corps tattoo that spoke of battles fought and survived, slowly raised a weathered eyebrow in growing recognition of something he hadn't expected to encounter. The clerk behind the counter felt his jaw tense involuntarily, his earlier confidence beginning to crack like ice under pressure. Someone in the gathered crowd muttered dismissively under their breath, "Just another wannabe trying to impress us." But the man wearing dark sunglasses, perhaps seeking entertainment or genuinely curious about this unfolding drama, spoke up with casual indifference. "Let her try it out. Honestly, I could use a good laugh today." The clerk slammed the magnificent specter down onto the counter with the force of a gauntlet thrown in medieval challenge, the metallic impact echoing through the suddenly hushed shop like a gunshot. "Don't you dare drop it, princess," he snarled, his words dripping with condescension and barely concealed hostility, as if her very presence was an insult to everything this place represented. Lily didn't respond with words, didn't dignify his provocation with so much as a gainsey or defensive retort. Instead, she moved with the fluid grace of someone who had performed this ritual countless times before, picking up the precision instrument in one seamless motion using just one hand, her grip confident and sure. There wasn't even the slightest tremor in her fingers, no hesitation or uncertainty that might betray inexperience or nervousness under pressure. Her delicate fingers, those same ones they'd mocked for their manicured appearance, brushed over every component with surgical precision, the advanced scope with its crystal-clear optics, the perfectly balanced stock crafted from aerospace-grade materials, the hair trigger mechanism calibrated to perfection. She rotated the muzzle with practiced expertise, her eyes sharp and calculating as they traced every line and curve, every specification and potential flaw. What happened next defied every assumption they'd made about this unassuming young woman. 7 seconds later, with movements so fluid they seemed choreographed by years of muscle memory, she had completely field-stripped the weapon into its component parts, each piece laid out with military precision. 9 seconds after that miraculous display of technical mastery, the Spectre was reassembled perfectly, every component locked into place with the satisfaction of absolute expertise. The coffee man, that weathered Marine veteran who had seen more than his share of soldiers and warriors, stood slowly from his corner position, his movements heavy with recognition and growing respect. "Where exactly did you learn to do that?" he asked, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood the significance of what he'd just witnessed. Lily didn't look up from her examination of the weapon, her focus remaining laser-sharp on the task at hand. Rooftop of Kandahar, crosswind conditions, night operation. She offered no further explanation, no elaboration or storytelling, just those few words that painted a picture more vivid than any lengthy narrative could accomplish. Whispers began spreading through the assembled crowd like wildfire through dry grass. "You were actually in the military," someone asked with newfound irreverence. "Which unit were you with?" Another pressed, curiosity replacing their earlier mockery. Her only answer came without flourish or drama. "I'm retired." The reinforced door to the range opened with a mechanical hiss that seemed to announce the transition from mockery to something far more serious and profound. They led her through the threshold like witnesses to an execution, their earlier laughter and condescending jokes having evaporated completely, replaced by something infinitely colder and more unsettling. Skepticism hung thick in the recycled air, mingling with suspicion and the growing realization that they might have gravely underestimated this quiet young woman. Fear crept into their expressions like shadows at dusk, because deep down, they were beginning to understand that everything they thought they knew was about to be shattered. At exactly 200 meters down the pristine range, a metal coin no larger than a quarter dangled from a thin wire, swaying almost imperceptibly in the artificial breeze generated by the ventilation system. That coin had become something of a legend in this establishment, a symbol of impossible precision that had mocked countless expert marksmen over the years. No one had successfully hit it in recent memory. Despite the attempts of decorated veterans, competitive shooters, and self-proclaimed experts who had tried and failed to claim bragging rights, the woman with the tactical ponytail crossed her arms defensively across her chest, her earlier sweet demeanor now replaced with barely concealed hostility and stubborn disbelief. "Beginner's luck doesn't impress me in the slightest," she declared with forced confidence, as if her words could somehow diminish what everyone sensed was about to unfold before their eyes. Lily pulled on her cracked leather shooting gloves with deliberate ceremony, each finger sliding into place like a pianist preparing for a concert that would define her career. The worn leather spoke of countless hours spent perfecting her craft, of dedication that went far beyond hobby or casual interest. She settled into position with the fluid grace of someone who had done this thousands of times before, her body finding that perfect balance between tension and relaxation that only comes from years of training under the most demanding conditions. She took one deep breath, then another, centering herself in that meditative space where time slows and the world narrows to just the target in the shot. The first shot rang out like thunder in the enclosed space, sharp and definitive. The coin spun wildly on its wire, dancing like a living thing caught in an invisible storm. The second shot followed with mechanical precision, taking a deliberate chip from the edge, proving that the first hadn't been mere chance but calculated intent. The third shot came with the inevitability of fate itself, and the coin split cleanly in two perfect halves, the pieces fluttering down toward the concrete floor like autumn leaves caught in a gentle breeze. No one cheered in celebration. No one spoke a single word. The silence was so complete it seemed to absorb sound itself. The man in sunglasses slowly lowered his smartphone, his hand trembling slightly as the weight of what he'd just recorded settled over him like a heavy blanket. He hadn't meant to film the birth of a legend, but that's exactly what he'd captured for posterity. She rose slowly from her shooting position with the deliberate grace of someone who had just delivered an undeniable message. Her movements unhurried and purposeful as she methodically packed her worn gear back into that oversized canvas backpack. Each item was placed with the same precision she'd demonstrated with the rifle, every action speaking to years of disciplined routine and unwavering attention to detail. Without a word or backward glance at the stunned faces surrounding her, she turned toward the exit, ready to disappear as quietly as she had arrived, leaving behind only the echo of impossibility made manifest. The clerk's voice cracked like a whip through the heavy silence, desperation and authority battling in his tone. "Ma'am, hold on just 1 minute. We absolutely need to see credentials before you leave. Military identification, shooting permits, something official." His demand hung in the air like a challenge, the last desperate attempt to maintain some semblance of control over a situation that had spiraled far beyond his understanding. Without breaking stride or showing the slightest hint of irritation, she reached into her jacket and handed him a plain, unremarkable card. There was no flashy hologram, no government barcode, no official seals or elaborate security features. Just a simple emblem embossed in black, a serpent wrapped elegantly around a precision rifle scope. Its design both beautiful and somehow deeply ominous. The clerk examined it with growing confusion, turning it over in his hands as if searching for hidden meaning. "Is this supposed to be some kind of joke, a sticker from a video game?" His laughter was hollow, forced, betraying his uncertainty even as he tried to maintain his earlier bravado and dismissive attitude. But the manager, who had been watching this entire extraordinary sequence unfold in stunned silence from behind the safety of his office window, suddenly stepped forward with movements that seemed almost involuntary. The color drained from his weathered face as recognition hit him like a physical blow, his eyes widening with a mixture of terror and absolute reverence. "She's Ghost Viper 17, he whispered, the words falling from his lips like a bomb detonating in slow motion, each syllable carrying the weight of legend made flesh. The Marine veteran's coffee cup clattered to the floor as his body snapped to attention, muscle memory overriding conscious thought as he rendered a crisp, perfect salute to someone whose reputation had reached mythical status in certain circles. A woman clutching shopping bags gasped audibly, her hand flying to cover her mouth. Dear God, that's the sniper! The ghost from Operation Grey Wolf who saved an entire battalion. People stared with the kind of awe reserved for witnessing miracles, their earlier laughter dying in their throats like smoke dissipating in wind. The mockery that had filled this space just moments before transformed into something approaching worship. But the recognition came far too late to matter. By the time darkness settled over Denver like a velvet curtain, Lily Monroe had become something she never intended to be, a viral sensation exploding across every conceivable social media platform with the unstoppable force of digital wildfire. The hashtag spread like contagion through the internet's bloodstream. Viper17, she, split the coin. The woman they laughed at, each and one carrying the weight of a story that had captured the collective imagination of millions who hungered for tales of the underestimated, proving their worth against impossible odds. The grainy smartphone footage, captured accidentally by a man who thought he was recording someone's humiliation, transformed overnight into something approaching digital scripture. Within 24 hours, the video had amassed over 2 million views, each replay driving the view counter higher as people shared it with friends, family, and strangers who needed to witness what happened when arrogance met genuine excellence. Comment sections overflowed with everything from military veterans sharing their own stories to young people declaring Lily their new role model, the footage becoming a rallying cry for anyone who had ever been dismissed or underestimated. The fallout was swift and merciless, like justice delivered by an unseen hand. The clerk who had sneered about bakeries and princesses found himself clearing out his desk before the lunch hour arrived, his termination swift and absolute as management scrambled to distance themselves from the public relations nightmare he had created. The man in sunglasses, the one whose casual cruelty had been immortalized in high definition, panicked and deleted every trace of his social media presence, disappearing into digital anonymity as if he could somehow erase his role in the humiliation that was now being viewed by millions. The woman with the tactical ponytail, whose condescending remarks about museum pieces and YouTube tutorials had been captured for posterity, quietly resigned from her prestigious training position at a nearby firearms academy. Her reputation, built over years of expertise and professional accomplishments, crumbled in the span of a single viral moment, proving that sometimes the internet's judgment arrives with the precision of a sniper's bullet. The gun shop itself, faced with a tsunami of negative publicity and boycott threats, issued a carefully worded public apology that tried desperately to repair damage that seemed irreparable. Their statement spoke of learning experiences and commitment to treating all customers with respect, but the words felt hollow against the backdrop of what everyone had witnessed in that devastating video. Meanwhile, in the quiet corners of military forums and veteran message boards, the Marine veteran who had rendered that respectful salute posted a comment that would become legendary in its own right. I served my country for 30 years across 3 different conflicts, and I have never in my life seen hands like hers. What we witnessed wasn't just skill, it was artistry elevated to the level of the divine. A teenage boy from suburban Phoenix saved the video to his phone, watching it repeatedly during quiet moments when doubt crept into his young mind. Years later, he would still remember the lesson it taught him. I honestly didn't know what true greatness looked like until that day. He would tell anyone who asked about his inspiration to pursue excellence, despite the voices that told him he wasn't good enough. But Lily Monroe, the woman at the center of this digital hurricane, remained characteristically silent. She didn't post celebratory messages on Instagram, didn't tweet her thoughts about going viral, didn't grant interviews to the media outlets, desperately seeking her perspective on the story that had captivated the world. By the time people started looking for her, she had already disappeared back into whatever shadows had concealed her before that fateful day, leaving behind only the echo of split coins and shattered assumptions. The next morning arrived with the kind of deceptive stillness that precedes life-altering moments. And somewhere along an unmarked stretch of interstate highway, Lily Monroe sat in the passenger seat of a nondescript government SUV, watching the American landscape blur past her window Like memories she preferred to keep moving. The leather seats smelled of official business and unspoken secrets, while the steady hum of high-performance tires on asphalt created a hypnotic rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Resting unopened in her lap was a manila envelope bearing the ominous stamp that had changed everything. Reactivation. The word seemed to pulse with possibility and dread, representing a door she had thought permanently closed. A chapter of her life she had believed finished forever. But she hadn't opened it yet, couldn't bring herself to break the seal that would officially pull her back into a world she had worked so hard to leave behind. Her fingers found their way to the faded patch tucked deep inside her canvas backpack, that same worn fabric she had carried through countless missions and sleepless nights. The emblem was identical to the one on her identification card. Simple yet unmistakably powerful, a serpent coiled around a precision rifle scope, representing a legacy of silence, accuracy, and shadows that most people would never understand or need to know existed. It was a life she had never wanted to explain to civilians, never wanted to justify or defend, because some stories are too heavy for ordinary conversation and some truths too sharp for casual sharing. She didn't look back toward Denver, didn't crane her neck for one last glimpse of the city where she had accidentally become a legend. She didn't need to, because that moment had already served its purpose and taught its lesson to anyone willing to listen and learn from what they had witnessed. Because what truly mattered in the end wasn't what those people in the gun shop had thought about her appearance or capabilities. It wasn't the millions of views that her accidental viral moment had generated. Wasn't the digital fame that would fade as quickly as it had appeared. It wasn't even the respectful salutes from veterans who recognized greatness when they encountered it. Though those gestures had touched something deep in her soldier's heart, what mattered was something far more profound and lasting than internet celebrity or social media validation. She had walked into that shop in complete silence, carrying herself with quiet dignity, and somehow the entire world had gotten loud in response. She had stood perfectly still in the face of their mockery and condescension, never raising her voice or defending her honor with words, and they had crumbled under the weight of their own assumptions. She had spoken softly, sharing only the barest minimum of her truth, and it had been more than enough to shatter every preconception they had built about who she was and what she represented. That was the real power she carried. The true lesson that would echo long after the viral videos were forgotten. Sometimes the quietest footsteps leave the loudest echoes in history. They mocked her clothes. They mocked her voice. They mocked her presence. But they forgot real power doesn't need permission. She didn't shout. She didn't fight back. She just hit the target and walked away. If you've ever been told you're not enough, just remember, you don't have to prove anything. Just be silent and let the truth speak for itself. Share your story below. Follow for more voices they tried to silence, but never could.